Hello and welcome to Stockton Junction, just a continuation of the river scene. So what I've done so far, as you saw in the previous video I believe, I'd had all these rocks that I put in while the plaster was all still wet, little stones. These are proper rocks from the garden, and I've let it all dry. I've then given it a complete coat of raw umber, which is quite dark, but then I've gone along and you can either dry brush, or I used my air gun with a lighter brown across the top. In this case it was Humbrol Matte 29 mixed with a little bit of raw umber first, and then I did another one, so there's actually 3 shades in there, which I coated the whole lot in, which helps seal it all in for putting the water in later on. So the next stage is to start to pick the rocks out, which is where I'm at now. So to start off with, literally all I'm doing is using Humbrol Matte 64 grey. Literally just paint the rock. There's more at the end here because that's where the excuse me, that's where the waterfall, the first waterfall, is going to come down. I might be having 2 now, as I've had a little change of plan on where the road's going to go in front. So, just finish these ones off quickly, won't take long. Obviously you could pick them out with some different greys if you wanted to. More bit of browny grey, depends on if you're modelling a particular area. You might want to pay attention to what colour the rocks are in that area. I'm going to be toning these down in a minute anyway, so I'm not too bothered. And you can also, if you want some of, because I've used different course of stone, you can always pick out the odd one and one or two here and there. That one's actually loose. That helps to blend it a little bit more. This is small bits of rock that have dropped down. I don't want too many though. Right, that'll do, I think. Right, so that's that stage. I'm just going to clean my brush off quickly. Once that stage is dry, then we move on to the next stage, and that'll be putting a bit of black wash over the rocks, which dulls them down like the ones that you see at the back. And so I'm just gonna use a black wash. I can do some while they're still wet to get a bit more tone variation in colour, which will change the grey rather than just wash. So I'm going to do a couple quickly now. That's taking too much paint there. That one's still too wet, so we shall come back to that one in a minute. It's the just show you what else I've been doing while we give those a couple of minute to dry. I've started to put a base layer on the field there, which is going to be the horse field. That's just the first layer of scenic turfs. There's 3 different tones in there. I'm using, first of all, go round with the fine turf weeds, did round like the edges more and a few patches, darker patches. Then I used the blended turf, which I sprinkled around, and used the fine turf burnt grass to cover the rest afterwards. Obviously I've still got to blow off a bit more excess, a bit's already gone over the corner. I started to paint the car park area for the woods that are going to go there, and I started to do a bit more of the road there. I've only just cut this piece out, so it's still to be glued down and plastered, but it's getting there quite slowly. And if I bring it down, I think you might be able to see just about, there's quite a few elevation changes as it goes up through, which is sort of kind of the idea I was looking for. I don't want it all flat. Obviously it starts off lower there, comes up there, this road coming back down goes down again, but it also goes up there, and then it actually comes back down slightly there. So, and then the hillside at the back obviously goes down, which will allow me room to get all my trees in. And that's what I've been doing in the last few days, is making a few trees, and I'll show you quickly what I've been doing. So there are some of my trees that I have made. These are just seafoam trees that I've sprayed and then flocked in my way. I've also made some silver birch trees, so which I think are quite effective. So basically what I've done, I'll leave it against the white, is when you get your box, I got a big box of seafoam off eBay, so I pull out all the good stuff that looks like this, obviously pull off the lower branches, and I put them all into a big piece of polystyrene, hence that piece. I then spray all of these brown, leave them to dry, and then obviously put glue, scatters, etc. I will do a video on tree making and how I do these, because obviously the way I do it may be different to other people's ways, and especially with the silver birches, there's a specialist way of doing those to make them like that, because you do not want a silver birch with this much foliage on. It's obviously, they're quite thin foliage leaves on a silver birch. I've taken a lot of pictures and tried to make them as sort of realistic as possible. So those trees there are all going to be for the woods at the back there and this area. I've still got a lot of trees to make, and it's going to be quite a scenic area, so I'm just hoping that. These are now sort of dry enough to put the washes on, which they should be. So, yeah. So literally just scrub the wash on. It looks quite dark at the moment. That's fine. Don't worry about that if you're using a good wash. You can either make a wash, or you could you know, using very watered down black paint, or you can just buy wash ready done. I think these over here might still be a bit wet. Yeah, they're still a little bit damp, so I shall leave those for now. But basically, when these start to dry, they'll start to look more like these stones here, which obviously look a lot better than those there. They've dulled right down. But they'll be, it picks out sort of like the edges and details. When I was looking for stones in the garden, I was looking for ones that had lots of nice sort of shapes on them, so they looked quite good. So the next sort of stage with this is going to be adding a bit of vegetation. As you obviously see in a stream, etc., there's always a bit of vegetation, you know, weed, etc. So just get my loop up. There is another sort of stage that I was thinking of doing, which I'll do quickly first, and that is where the river is. Getting my wash with a bigger brush, I'm just going to add a bit more black to the centre. The reason for this is to make it look the effect of being deeper. Not worried. And this wash will sort of lighten up a bit anyway, so it's quite a good wash. Right, so just in case anyone's wondering, the wash I'm using is this. It's pretty expensive actually. I used to use it years ago for model making, but it's got quite expensive. I'd run out of Indian ink, and which is my usual go-to for this sort of project. Black Indian ink is absolutely brilliant. So next job is to find yourself a suitable scatter material. Me being me, I'm not prepared. I didn't get my scatter. And get some bushes as well. So got pretty much a choice of colours. I think I'll go for the blended turf, and all we're looking at doing here is dabs. I try not to make it too uniform. I'll have a little bit extra there. And again, I'm using Mod Podge matte PVA. For the simple reason it doesn't dry shiny, so it won't leave that horrible glossy look later on it if there's any patches showing. Not that it would really matter too much in this area. So I think once the water's in place later, that will pretty much take away any shine anyway. So the next thing I'm going to use, I'm just going to use some of these bushes first. But what I'm looking for is a piece, but I only want small tiny pieces. So I'm going to break them up. I'm just going to put a few random pieces. These are just to give a bit of variation throughout. And this will make quite a lot of difference later on. Once the water is actually in place, obviously it'll cover all of this and it'll give it a lot of depth, because you'll see all the various tones and colours and shapes. Other thing I want to do is just going to quickly say that when I was making the base, two of my products that I used, obviously the bigger rocks were normal stones. I also bought from a model shop, which was this. I've got a couple of colours, but obviously the colours didn't matter because of the painting afterwards. But I got this, and I've got it in two different sizes. So I used that, and also I just used this, which I had laying around, which is a very fine, almost like a ballast. So I placed the bigger rocks first, then used this stuff, and then filled in all the gaps with the really fine stuff. You could probably get away with like N-gauge ballast or something like that. That's quite useful, and N-gauge ballast is also very useful for making gravel pathways, etc. It's ideal, so it's not a waste of money for us double O gauge modelers. The next thing I actually need to do now, I apologise, it's very hard to hold the cameras a bit, it keeps trying to fall over. I just want to get some grasses now to replicate. So what we're going to get is some woodland scenics, and I'm just going to open the packet because I hadn't got this prepared, and I'm using 7mm static medium green grass. I think this is quite a nice sort of colour for what I'm trying to achieve. One good thing about this, it comes in a nice zip seal bag, which is handy. So I'm just going to get a little bit of this grass, and what I want to do is put it in, trying to put it in at an angle facing forwards. And I don't want it to be upright, I want it to be led down. what we're trying to recreate is those long stringy type weeds that flow in the water, and they sort of flow. You see them if you have a look at rivers. Being a bit of a fisherman, obviously I see a lot of these things. So I'm just going to put a few of these in. And the excess will be hoovered up later, it's not a problem. I'm not going to worry too much about the rear of the water because, to be honest, it's going to be pretty much out of scene when I get up to the back there. Well, that'll do for that. And then the next job is to take the scatter. I'm just going to cover over all the rest of the glue patches. Oops, I should be a bit more careful not to get these on the rocks because there might be some things, although it wouldn't matter. There's a bit of algae or something on the rock, not a problem. Which you might have quite a good effect doing that. Obviously it won't be as thick as this later once we hoover up, and if it's not enough I can always add more. But for now I'm going to just do it like this. So you could add a bit of different green colour to make some different colours if you wished. I think the amount that I've put on there is going to be pretty good, so just going to let that in there to dry off. So we shall leave that now, and obviously I'll have to come back to this tomorrow once it's dry and hoover it off, and I'll show you what it looks like at that point. As I can also hoover this whole area off and start putting in some of the greenery over here. I'm just deciding at the moment whether to make the car park area as more of a gravel car park, as I've got that gravel that I can use. It's just then a case of what colours to paint it. So that's an option I'm thinking about at the moment, and I'll come back to you with another video in a day or two showing you the progress of how this looks and how I'm getting on with this area over here. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.